A lot's been going on lately, and the council passed a budget that made some recommendations and some changes to the police budget, though protesters had been asking for different measures, and some have called those the measures that were taken sort of half-hearted, and that they'll likely be the end of the process rather than the beginning. What would you say to those voices?
I can certainly understand why they might feel that way, especially because a lot of people did call for much deeper cuts. But I want to emphasize that this is just the beginning of the process. There are a lot of laws in place, both state and city, that a state law that requires us to pass a budget, and it has to be a complete budget for the whole year, and it has to be done by the end of June. Meanwhile, there are a lot of other ordinances and statutes that say what our police department has to do. So the council can't just do an across the board cut that would prevent the police department from doing the things that they're already required to do. What we need to do is go back and look at those ordinances and statutes and reevaluate what it is that we're asking officers to do, and then we can start making the cuts in a more precise and surgical way. So this is just the beginning of that process. There wasn't an ability to do all of that before the end of June. And I think that I hope people will continue to stay engaged with us because our goal is to start working on a zero-based budget for the police department and go up from there. So there will be many more changes to come.
The council to date has talked about how policy changes are part of the longer term strategy as much as fiscal changes. Can you go into more detail about what that means and what that would look like?
Well, two of the policy changes we've already asked the city attorney's office to look at is strengthening the role of the Police Civilian Review Board to try to increase civilian oversight of our police department. And then the second is asking the city attorney to draft an ordinance that would prevent the city from accepting any militarized equipment for our police department under the federal 1033 program. So those are just two ordinance changes that we're looking at. We also have announced the creation of a joint commission on racial equity in policing, and we're going to ask that body to do to help guide us, both the council and the mayor, on what ordinance and policy changes can be made, both in the short term and the long term, to help dismantle some of the systemic inequality that is built into the system that we have right now.
Salt Lake City is a big place, but I think it's often confused for a much larger area than it is. Can you talk about what exactly is in the purview of Salt Lake City, so where these changes are going to be made, as opposed to other municipalities or parts of the county or the state even?
I think Salt Lake City, as the capital city, we have been a leader in these types of progressive policies before, and we want to continue to do that, not just for the residents of Salt Lake City, but for the entire state. And we are all in this together, and I think that other communities are going to be looking to Salt Lake City for leadership on how to address these issues. But some of our limitations are we don't have our own jail for Salt Lake City. That's run by the county, and a lot of these policies that that we're going to be looking at could implicate that. It could implicate work that we do with other law enforcement agencies, and of course, a lot of what we're able to do in Salt Lake City is constrained by existing state law. So, if the commission finds that there are state laws that are hampering our ability as a city to sort of reimagine the role of policing, then those may become part of Salt Lake City's lobbying efforts to change those laws higher up.
What are things that other government entities can do to support Salt Lake City's commitment to reform, be it neighboring municipalities or on a county, state, or federal level?
The first thing that leaders can do at all levels of government is to listen to the Black and Brown voices that are coming forth and saying these are the ways that the current system oppresses us and disproportionately does a disservice to our communities. And I would love to see a commission at every level of government that's identifying what that particular government entity can do within their power and authority to try to dismantle these systems of oppression that continue to plague our country. And then I also hope that we can depend on other municipalities to step up and recognize the work that Salt Lake City is doing and realize that this is something that needs to happen in communities across the state and across the country.
What are the next steps people should be looking for as far as accountability? What should they be seeing coming up next?
The From Salt Lake City in particular, I think the ordinances that I mentioned previously, we have an audit that we've asked to do with the police department that will take a really in-depth look of where exactly we're spending our money on policing, and then looking to this commission on racial equity and policing and the recommendations that are going to be coming from that committee. The council has asked for a review of both of the police budget and some of the policies that we're looking for this commission to put forth within 6 months. So I hope that there will be more information before that time so that we can also get more public input on those recommendations and then start implementing them.
How can people maintain the ability to make their voices heard and be heard as this process unfolds?
I think that the activism and engagement that we've seen so far has been really great, and I hope that I'm very proud of our residents for what they've been doing, and I hope they continue to call us, email us, come to our city council meetings, um, have these demonstrations where they're telling these stories, and just continue to dialogue and engage with us in good faith, so that we can keep the momentum going.